and we've been very fortunate to been able to do the things that we have for technically, kind of a part-time or semi-hobby.
So you had a peak then, a time of, the stars aligning before the music industry went through all its contortions. You guys now, because I'm in the same boat, and I think a lot of, aspiring every aspiring musician is, and sometimes even seemingly established musicians are in the boat where they've got the day job they've got, and they've got their music, which they either need to decide is a passion they need to go full bore on and make a career, if by hook or crook, or if it's just a hobby they need to be, like you said, be artistically satisfied with. And so, where are you guys now, kind of in your life and your outlook on the whole music industry and the music career in that respect?
Well, I think for me, it's hard. It's weird to say that the feeling is still the same from day one. But really, it is. I mean, we don't let this or that bring us down too much. We have goals, and it's once the record's out, our thing is let's promote it. We need to book. We need to play. We need to, and then you do that for a year, maybe two, or whatever, and because the stars haven't aligned for years at a time, and we haven't been able to do this full time as our career, as our job, it takes us a little longer to work things out or whatever. But as soon as the album's out, it's okay. We play, promote. Me and Chris we still have bits of music, and we'll say, oh, I got this new bit, or that hasn't changed, as far as writing and our goals. That is still the same, and we still try to push the band and the songs and the albums every bit as hard as we did even then.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed, but obviously our personal lives have changed. For me, I'm married, I have a daughter, so that changed. Obviously from when I was 21 and single and
fancy free, yeah.
And I could live on, a bag of salad or whatever, and we're still around. Something to be said.
Well, yeah, we're like the Anvil of Progressive Rock.
Is that your term, or has someone called you that, Chris?
No, we joke around about that all the time.
Oh, that's good. Well,
we say that quite a bit.
You need a documentary done after you. Maybe this will prompt one. So how you guys book, you guys promote, you guys hustle everywhere.
Every goddamn, and you can print that. Every goddamn thing comes from the band.
So what is that's the necessity, and I think it's good for definitely. It's for instance, I'm starting up a career, and I'm definitely going to do that only because that's all I can afford. It's because no one's going to show interest unless you have a track record, but also to learn it all so that you know how to delegate later if and when that you're blessed with that opportunity to hand it off to someone else. So why haven't you guys done that? You guys control freaks? You don't have the critical mass to support it, or just no one's interested? Why not?
To be honest with you, it's not like we haven't tried. We've talked to people over the years. I think one of the problems that we have suffered from is we had some success here locally right out of the gate, a bit. We were getting some radio airplay and stuff, but also remember when we were first coming out, it was really the dying of metal or hard rock, and alternative rock was taken up. Mm-hmm. So I think when we put a ton of energy into finding management for the longest period of time, there in the first 5 years, we were, I'm sure in most of the world except for Europe and stuff, in Japan, we were a non-existent entity as far as music, style of music,
Right.
You know what I mean? Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden ruled the airwaves. It's hard to go to a management company, even though Chris's business plans are ridiculously meticulous.
Oh wow, you do business plans. That's even that's a wonder right there, Chris.
They were ridiculous, and they were just absolutely laid out what our plans were. And
you guys think you were swimming against the stylistic tide? Chris, is that basically it, or sounds like you did everything else right?
Especially in North America, which is why we had, our success was really overseas in Europe and Japan, you know, in the 10 years since we kind of started in the early mid-90s, grunge was taken off, and we were the antithesis of, you know, that kind of music. You know, our songs were long and busy bass playing and odd meters and all that kind of stuff, and it was not what was really in the mainstream.
Had the high register tenor vocals, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I mean, Paul too. I mean, think about the singers that were popular in that era. I mean, you know, we had Paul, an amazing singer, who, I mean, you know, he wasn't into like the super octave stuff, but at higher register, and you know, we're out at the same time as Pearl Jam.
Do you need to scream to get along in that Pearl Jam Nirvana crowd?
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with Nirvana. I've never liked Eddie Vedder's vocals. They're out of tune.
That's part of the art, I guess they would say.
Yeah, well, but you know what? Really, that's the problem. And I don't want to go on a tangent here, but that's the problem. Reviewers of that's the feeling of it. Oh, really? So being out of tune is a feeling. I didn't know that. then you know what? I guess the Cramps are like the Beethoven of our era. If being out of tune is good, then the Cramps, every album the Cramps have ever done, is a masterpiece.
Well,
I don't know if you.
Oop, I'm getting a little loop back. Sorry. Yoko Ono came out with it. Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, Yoko Ono. I listen to Howard Stern, and she's come out with a new album of her noise rock type stuff, and I got a 5-star review in Rolling Stone, just gushing, and it was just fun to listen to Howard, among other people, berate the critics for the dishonesty and, and absurdity of.
Well, and there you go, and that's really in the early '90s, mid '90s. That's what almost every progressive rock band had to fight against. You know, and really in the early 2000s too. If you played in a garage, then you were the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, that early punk you know, and there was some great bands that came out of that. So don't get me wrong, but
right.
It didn't matter if a reviewer happened into a bar and you guys were just bashing your guitars, then that was the greatest thing that they had ever heard. You know, rather than there's nothing wrong. I think that's maybe the problem, is that reviewers and music critics think that there's something wrong with a well-crafted song and a well-sung melody or even a well-crafted guitar part, a melodic guitar, or the bass weaving parts in. There isn't anything wrong with that, but that's not cool to those people.
Yeah. I want to ask one thing, only because the angle here is with Rush, and what struck me is the number of connections, kind of peripherally anyway, you have with the band. So, you know, this I think it was the last album was produced by Terry Brown, who was Rush's longtime producer. You've got artwork from Hugh Syme, who's the longtime collaborator. Aside from the stylistic elements, which I'd like to talk about, that are kind of common to a lot of the great prog rock. The complexity, the mixed meters, even the lyrical approach and content you guys take. But tell me how those connections came about, and what you thought of them.
It started out between our first and second CD. We had, like I mentioned, a good response to the first CD, and we had produced that locally, with a pretty minimal budget, and we're definitely happy with the sonic quality. But we thought, well, if we're going to actually, maybe try and achieve some next level of attention or additional quality, we should, find, someone
who has a track record and
a name, or that level of industry recognition. Coincidentally, Terry Brown had just done that Rush tribute for Magna Carta. But, there were like a list of 5 or 6 people. One was the guy that had done Kansas, and I had just kind of gone through albums and people whose work, kind of were in that progressive realm, thinking they would have an affinity for delivering that kind of music. And actually, Terry, I put in like 3 or 4 calls, and Terry was the first one to respond and heard the rough mixes of what we were doing. and really liked it, so we kind of went with that. He's a great guy, and he's got a great ear. You know, he comes from 60s in England with, you know, kind of the advent of the British invasion, and worked with just an incredible number of bands, historical recordings now, but
yeah.
So obviously his track record besides Rush is pretty impressive, and you know, the mix on Fence to Clear was just so big and vibrant that, you know, we were spoiled. And when we did our third CD, it just seemed, you know, pointless not to go back to Terry.
Right.
And it was actually Terry who suggested giving Hugh a call, because he said, you know, this presence of mind stuff is, he was really complimentary about it, and he said, well, you know, you guys might want to consider stepping up your artwork another notch too. And so we called Hugh, and he was interested because Terry was involved, and so all of a sudden now there's Terry Brown and Hugh Syme.
Yeah, look out.
And it kind of stuck for our third, fourth, and fifth CDs. And unfortunately, because, you know, we bear some influence of Rush, I suppose, me especially, with some of the guitar chord voicings and arpeggios and that kind of approach. Jeff had never been much of a Rush fan at all, but through sharing, I suspect, some of the same influences as Geddy, you know, Chris Squire, and, you know, being kind of a very energetic personality, his bass parts were just always kind of busy and melodic. So really it was just kind of a convergence from different places that kind of set us on that Rush, I don't know what the word is, not parallel, but kind of some obvious Rush influences there. And then certainly using Terry and Hugh didn't minimize any of that. So there's a pretty healthy contingency out there in the music world that thinks we're just, you know, blatantly trying to coattail and capitalize on those certain elements. But
the benefits of you know, having those two skilled folks, you know, even if they weren't the Rush folks, hopefully outweighs the bad press, if any, or does it?
If you take away our first disc, and if you listen to Fence to Clear and from then on, I mean, you can't hide certain influences, I guess, but they aren't copycat albums at all. That I'm probably the one that gets.
I think it just got to be a convenient or almost lazy way for reviewers or critics to kind of, you know, tag us.
Well, it was very. I mean, your stuff is. I don't know. Am I right? Is it's heavier? It's even more guitar oriented than the recent Rush, which is, you know, kind of guitarish or back to basics. So I hear you absolutely.
No, I mean, it's just, and to me, I mean, Chris uses, and this doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, think about all the guitars that, if you go back and if you look at the credits, I mean, Chris plays trumpet on a song on Window Dressing. He plays banjo, mandolin, what's that little tiny, a parlor guitar. I mean, we're just, you know, I mean, not that Alex couldn't do any of that stuff, but I'm just saying that, I mean, it's from an arrangement kind of thing. It's not like we just cheesed our way and it's like, okay, Chris only plays suspended chords now, and just we're bashing through suspension chords, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's just not what it is. I mean, you can't help but music that's done before you. That's like saying that nobody can ever play a Led Zeppelin drum beat. Well, then what the fuck are you going to do?
I know. Well, dude, Chris is right. It's and I'm facing this myself. I think a lot of bands do. When you're starting out, people don't know who the hell you are, and so you got to give them a context, and the context is that easiest handle. What do you sound like? I sound like nothing you've ever heard. Well, that's the most boring answer ever. Thanks for talking.
But so you know what, though, as a review, I've never minded when somebody says this band is reminiscent of early Rush or 80s Rush, whatever. I mean, whatever they decide. But the reviewers that obviously listen to music and, you know, at least as far as what I'm concerned as a member of the band, I don't mind if you use that as a frame of reference, because every band, you know, Tool borrows a ton from King Crimson.
Yeah.
You know, they do. So Tool, it's not like Tool could be pissed off about saying, hey, they've obviously listened to some King Crimson and some Rush, and so I would never be pissed off if somebody said that about Rush as far as us, but it's when they're like, these Rush clones.
Right, when it's
That's
used as
bullshit.